Pretoria has granted the Reserve Bank a permission to liquidate the assets of VBS Mutual Bank.
In a very swift ruling, Judge Johan Louw took less than 10 minutes to grant the order that was unopposed. This comes after the Reserve Bank forensic report found about 50 companies and people, including politicians, had allegedly looted nearly 2 billion rand from VBS.
Some shareholders are, however, strongly opposed to the process of winding up or dissolving VBS.
Well, for more on this, we now cross to our reporter, Patricia Visagie, who's been following this story for us. Patricia?
Good afternoon, Peter. Certainly, I think that court ruling today signifies the beginning of the end of VBS. We've just learned from one of the liquidators who will be speaking to us right now that a liquidator was already appointed just after the court ruling this morning. So it seems like things are really winding up quite fast, but a long road is ahead. So now, right now, I'm joined by a liquidator, and that is Aviwe Ndyamara, and he'll just explain to us exactly how the process works. As you have mentioned, of course, a liquidator was appointed shortly after the court ruling. Just to update us who exactly and how the process will unfold.
Look, firstly, I just want to make it clear, I'm not privy to the contents of the application by the Reserve Bank, and I'm not privy to the actual court order that has been granted. The information that I have and what I understand is that there was an application by the Reserve Bank for the winding down, which was heard this morning. And my understanding, which is information that I've received about 30 minutes ago, is that the Reserve Bank then nominated the current curator or the previous curator, with this Mr. Rupla. So that's my information at the base. But in general, what would happen is that liquidators are supervised by the Master of the High Court. The Master of the High Court makes the appointment of liquidators and supervises them. And the Master of the High Court makes the appointment in two ways, in order to take the interest of the affected parties. Now, those affected parties being creditors, the municipalities, the depositors. So the depositors will get an opportunity to nominate their preferred liquidator in the form of what we call is a requisition system. So what has happened here, this process has been governed by the Banks Act in relation to the application and the appointment. But now the supervision is by the Master of the High Court. So we have a situation where you have a curator who was appointed, and obviously had powers in terms of his curator to investigate the affairs of VBS and interrogate that and see if there's prospects to actually rescue the company. Now, it was determined that the company is hopelessly insolvent, the bank, and there's an obligation for you to then liquidate. But there has to be proper checks and balances. So the rights of other stakeholders must be taken into consideration, as much as the Reserve Bank has got a right to nominate a liquidator. So yes, a liquidator, my understanding, has been appointed, but my personal view is that the Master must further appoint other liquidators for proper checks and balances and take their rights into consideration.
Are you saying that this is unusual, the way the liquidator was appointed?
No, not necessarily unusual. Look, it's governed by the Banks Act, and in terms of the Banks Act, they can nominate a preferred liquidator. But you can't have, a person who was a curator. For example, the curator would have incurred expenses in the curatorship, and perhaps the curator is a creditor himself. So now,
conflict of interest, perhaps?
It's questionable. It's questionable. But all we can do is say, in order to avoid that space where we have some objectivity, because municipalities, for example, are owed millions of rands. Depositors are owed millions of rand. So the Master of the High Court must consider that appointment. So I'm saying there's no objection into the current curator now being the liquidator, but what about the rights and of other affected parties? So the Master would usually appoint a liquidator in terms of value, number, and discretion. So in a matter of this nature, of this magnitude, you would have 3 to 4 liquidators appointed.
Now, The process officially starts today. As you just mentioned, a liquidator was appointed perhaps just a couple of hours after the court order. What happens now? How much time are we looking at until VBS Bank is officially non-existent, winded, as you've just put it?
That is a critical question. That is a question that we get from all affected parties. A matter of this nature, a minimum of at least 24 months to fully wind it up. You must appreciate we're dealing with a bank where a liquidator's objective and duties, one of the main duties, is to investigate thoroughly the affairs of the company, utilize the mechanisms that are provided in the Companies Act. For example, Section 417, 418, where you subpoena creditors, individuals who owe the money, who owe the company money, in order to recover. So the liquidator essentially has got a process that they need to follow. They'll have to extend their powers to investigate the affairs of the company, determine what assets they have, and elect if the funds that they currently have, will they utilize those funds to further investigate and look and try and recover monies, or will they possibly take the funds and draw an L&D account and perhaps give a dividend to the people who are owed monies.
Now, the VBS scandal remains a story that, of course, sends shockwaves around the country. In particular, the fact that vulnerable people, pensioners' money was looted. What rights do they have? We have to wrap up. If you can just, in short, put it for us.
No, the pensioners certainly have rights, and the depositors. In terms of the Insolvency Act, they would be looked at. There's three types of creditors. There'd be people who have security for their debt. There'd be preferred creditors, employees of VBS Bank, and you'd obviously have the concurrent creditors and the depositors. They are certainly vulnerable, we appreciate that, but they certainly have rights, and they still have the opportunity to nominate their preferred liquidator, where the master might consider that appointment.
All right, thank you so much. We'll leave it at there. There you hear it from, of course, Aviwe Ndyamara. He is a liquidator from the Tshwane Trust Company, just telling us what the process is to follow to wind up the assets of VBS Bank. Of course, he says a long road is still ahead. It might take anything up to a year to even 2 years before VBS Bank is completely shut. It's back to you in studio.
Many thanks there to our reporter Patricia Visagie, reporting live from Pretoria.